The Council of Europe's Václav Havel Human Rights Prize has been awarded to Murat Arslan from Turkey, the president of the now dissolved Association for the Union of Judges and Prosecutors. Now, Mr. Arslan could not attend the prize-giving ceremony here in Strasbourg because he's been in detention since 2016. The award was accepted on Mr. Arslan's behalf.
Je reçois avec un grand honneur.
I am absolutely delighted and honoured to receive this prize, which bears the name of a great intellectual and politician, Václav Havel, a prize which, thanks to the moral support that it represents, will be a great contribution to those who are fighting in my country for rights and freedoms. And I would like to dedicate it to all those who are deprived of their job unjustly, all the workers who've been thrown in prison, and all those who are fighting for rights and freedoms.
Pour les droits et les libertés.
The fifth edition of the Václav Havel Prize also saw nominations from the Hungarian Helsinki Committee, an NGO which focuses on access to justice and the rights of refugees, and Father Georg Sporschill, an Austrian Jesuit who has devoted much of his life to the care of the most vulnerable. David Wieg and Father Georg Sporschill are with me both in the studio. Thank you for coming in so soon after the awards ceremony. Can I start first of all? The main man, as we say, was missing. Father Sporschill.
I think the empty seat was the most impressive picture. Somebody who goes for his conviction and for what he has to do for human rights to prison. And he sent such a strong message that he will go on his way, and he didn't change any strength of his conviction. This was very touching and moving for me.
And indeed, the nomination, his award was accepted on his behalf, and in that statement that was read out by on his behalf, people are prepared to take every risk to secure rights and freedoms. That was the message that came across there. Would you agree with that at all, David Wieg?
I feel very bad about people needing to take the risk of being put in detention for working for a human rights cause, and I agree with the father that it was a very strong and powerful message today, and that's why on the other hand, I mean, it's a very sad news that he couldn't be with us today, but on the other hand, I'm very happy that he got the prize, because it's a very important recognition of how he works and the work that he has done in the protection of human rights and the rule of law.
Let's turn now both to your work here. Father Sporschill, Jesuit priest, as we say, working in Austria with some of the most vulnerable. What has your time there in Romania and other parts of Europe taught you about humanity?
About humanity, you meet wonderful people who are engaged in this work, like I met today David. I think this is a great gift of this work, that you just meet very good people with great heart and courageous people. And on the other hand, I spent 20 years with 3 children, and the most of my life I learned from them. I always say they are my teachers. They taught me how rich I am, how gifted I am, what I can do. So they made me somehow big and are teaching me about human being.
And David Wieg, the same question to you about humanity. A humanitarian way of life then?
All right, I mean, we rather work for human rights, more broadly speaking, than humanitarian reasons. The two are interrelated to some extent, but our approach is more human rights. But you deal with
asylum seekers as well,
and we
don't
do.
you?
I mean, asylum seekers, refugees, people in need of international protections, but on the other hand, also victims of state abuse and police abuse. We dealt with over 30,000 cases, and now I call them cases, but these are really stories of people. These are lives of people we are trying to help. It's a very important assistance and support that we do give to these people, victims of human rights abuses. These are Hungarian citizens, but also obviously internationals and other citizens that we work with.
Now, given the current situation with migrants and refugees and others to Europe, have you seen, both of you, an increase in your work, as it were?
Not in my work in Romania, at least in the rural side. There are no refugees. They don't want to come in this, and they wouldn't have a chance there. But I attended many discussions in rich countries, like in Austria, about refugees. And this made me in the past years very sad. Not what they are saying, but I always ask, do you know one refugee? Have you met one, or did you talk to one? And then you can make the difference. The one who knows somebody, you can easily talk to him. Also about the problems and that it's just too much and whatever. But if somebody knows it just by media or in the restaurant, it's really shocking and terrible how they speak about people who are in such a need. And I really hope that many people, starting with young people, get the chance to come in very personal contact to one person in need, in prison or refugee or street children. They change your way of feeling, thinking, and then you are able to discuss such a huge issue. But if you know it just theoretically or by media, it's terrible, the sound of speaking about this deep human suffering.
And how has that experience translated to your organization, David?
Look, on the one hand, if you talk about the number of clients that turned to us, that did increase, and we did provide support to over 5,000 people only in the last year who turned to us. But it's only a one and very minor part of the issue, and I don't think that I should complain about the amount of work that we are doing. It's rather about the human suffering that's behind what we see during our work, that people are escaping from conflict, from war, and this horror is treated in a legal procedure from a very legalistic point of view, and it's oftentimes very difficult to see the people behind these legal files for decision makers. And on the other hand, it did make our situation as a human rights organization a bit more difficult, particularly because senior decision makers did and still spread hatred against these people. In many parts of Europe, and Hungary is unfortunately no exception. And unfortunately, the Hungarian Helsinki Committee is one of the direct targets of this, what I would call hate propaganda, coming from senior decision makers, which did cause serious problems to us.
Now, you're both working at what we call the sharp end of human rights, basically. Would you say over time then, having what you've said already, that the situation is getting worse across Europe, Father Sporschill?
In Austria, there is now campaigning for the election, and if you would listen to this, I would say, yes, it's getting worse. But I hope everything gets back to normal life. I'm an optimist, and I see the positive side, the glass which is half filled, not the other one. And if you are personally involved in the work, then you are so much enjoyed or strengthened by everyone you can help or support, that you always say it's getting better. Even there are huge number of people who are still in need. But for me, I'm living with Roma, gypsy people in these villages where they are very poor and separated from the others still in Europe. My main colleagues and my best support are Roma, young Roma people who have been street children. They overcame themselves, surely with some support and friendship, their problems, and now they are the best social worker, teacher, and at the same time heroes of hope for everybody. So it's getting better, I say.
David Wiig, turning to you then, what is your assessment of the situation over a period of time with the human rights of others in Europe?
Look, on the long run, I think it's getting better and better. And also, if I see the individual cases and people that we are working with, I have to say that helping their cause and helping this situation keeps up the optimism if you are working in this field. If I have to think about how the context is changing in the country I'm coming from, and also for the organization that I'm working with, the Hungarian Helsinki Committee, then we are facing difficult times. But I'm sure there will be better times in the future as well. We came a long road after the Second World War, and we had to learn that if state power has no controls, then arbitrariness will prevail. And I think that this lesson is still there in the older generations, in the younger generations as well. Our role is to, our role is to constantly remind us and each other that we have been there, and we decided that we don't want to be there again.
Now, what would you say then will be your takeaway feeling, message, thoughts of the Václav Havel Human Rights Prize, quite a prestigious prize going for 5 years now?
I think Václav Havel himself, he was on one hand politician, on the other hand he was a poet, he was a friend, he was made literature. So this bridge between politics and power and the human being, I think the Parliamentary Assembly made today this bridge between NGOs and political institutions. And I think, as David said, this is a very important support for, on one hand, and corrector on the other hand. So I think this is the positive thing, that politicians and social workers and people who fight for human rights just go together, speak to each other. I always say it's really not good to speak about others. It would be much more useful to speak with others. You know, about gypsies and Roma, every congregation, everybody has said a lot of things. There is nothing more to be said. But to talk to them, to understand them, to listen to them, we are only starting. And it started.
And finally, to you, David Wiig, what does being nominated for the Václav Havel Prize mean to your organization?
At the Hungarian Helsinki Committee, we felt really honored to see that we are shortlisted for the 2017 edition of the Václav Havel Human Rights Prize, and just the fact that we are among the distinguished colleagues that were also shortlisted is already a great honor to us. Václav Havel wrote about the power of powerless, and this is really what I learned throughout the days here. Is that our fight and fighting for these causes are not useless. At the end of the day, those who feel or who seem not to have the power to overrule authoritarian regimes or illiberal states will win, and I'm sure that the human rights and the values of human rights and the concepts that are behind it are going to be safeguarded and protected by the institutions and the people who are there to protect them.
David Wiig and Father Georg Sporschill, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.